Sarah never imagined her childhood fascination would one day bring her face to face with one of the most powerful creatures on Earth. From the moment she saw a photograph of a mountain gorilla in a worn-out wildlife magazine, something awakened inside her, a quiet sense of connection. While other kids were playing video games or dreaming of stardom, Sarah spent her free time reading about primates, sketching their faces, and memorizing the stories of legendary conservationists like Diane Fossey. As she grew older, that passion never faded. It only deepened. She went on to study primatology at university, eager to understand not just the science of gorillas, but their minds, their emotions, and their complex social lives. For Sarah, this wasn't just a career, it was a calling. After years of research and field training, she finally had the chance she'd waited for her entire life: a volunteer placement at a gorilla conservation outpost in the volcanic mountain forests of Central Africa. This wasn't a zoo. There were no glass barriers or scheduled feedings. This was raw, untamed wilderness, and somewhere deep inside, a troop of wild gorillas lived as they had for centuries. With a small team of guides and local trackers, Sarah trekked through dense brush and winding forest trails for hours each day, hoping for a glimpse of the elusive creatures. The altitude made it hard to breathe. The insects were relentless, but Sarah never complained. Every snapped twig and distant grunt of a gorilla made her heart race with hope. Then, one misty morning, it happened. Through a gap in the foliage, she saw them, a group of gorillas resting in a clearing, their black coats glistening with dew. At the center was the alpha, a towering silverback with a scar across his shoulder and eyes that seemed almost aware. The guides whispered his name, Kwame. He was known to the locals, powerful, intelligent, and deeply protective of his family. Sarah stood frozen, breath held, heart pounding. She was witnessing something sacred. She knew the rules: maintain distance, stay calm, and never make sudden movements. But in that one quiet moment, locked in the gaze of a silverback, she felt something pass between them. Not fear, not dominance, but something far more human: recognition. She didn't know then that her bond with this gorilla would soon be tested in the most unexpected way imaginable. Sarah had been in the jungle for a few weeks now, spending each day following the gorillas at a respectful distance. Her skills as a primatologist were put to the test as she learned to move quietly through the dense underbrush and observe their behavior without disturbing them. It wasn't easy. Every step had to be calculated, every noise hushed. And yet, Sarah was growing more comfortable with the rhythm of the forest, the hum of nature surrounding her. On one particularly quiet afternoon, the group of gorillas they were tracking had settled in a peaceful clearing. The morning mist had lifted, and the sun shone softly through the treetops. Sarah felt a deep sense of awe and gratitude. She was in the presence of one of the most majestic animals on Earth, observing them as they interacted in their natural environment. As she crouched low to the ground, adjusting her binoculars to get a better view, she felt the familiar thrill of anticipation. The gorillas weren't aware of her yet. She had made sure to keep a safe distance. But the more she observed, the more she felt connected to them. She marveled at their interactions, the tenderness the females showed their babies, the way the younger gorillas played and wrestled together, their raw strength and innocence at the same time. It was then that Sarah's excitement made her forget one important rule: never get too close. In her eagerness to understand them, to see them up close, she edged just a little bit further into the clearing. She didn't mean to, but the forest around her was so thick and the gorillas were so captivating. She was completely absorbed. That's when the situation shifted. A soft grunt broke her concentration. She looked up to see a young gorilla charging toward her, its eyes wide, its body stiff. A rush of adrenaline surged through Sarah's chest. She froze, knowing she had made a mistake. The gorilla was getting closer, its movements aggressive but not fully charged. She felt her heart race, a mix of fear and confusion. Before she could react, she saw the towering figure of Kwame, the silverback, emerging from the edge of the clearing. His massive frame moved with purpose, every step measured, his eyes scanning the area. Sarah's body tensed. This was the moment where everything could go wrong. But then something incredible happened. Kwame didn't rush toward her in anger or aggression. Instead, he moved directly between Sarah and the young gorilla, his large body forming a protective barrier. His stance was calm, but commanding. The younger gorilla paused, its aggression subsiding under Kwame's watchful gaze. Sarah remained still, barely breathing. She could see the silverback's eyes locking onto hers for just a moment, as if communicating something unspoken. It was a strange moment, filled with tension and awe. Kwame wasn't showing any signs of hostility. Instead, he seemed to be protecting her from the young gorilla, and from himself. He was more than just a leader of the troop. He was acting as a guardian, an unexpected protector in a wild world where survival often meant fighting for dominance. As the seconds stretched on, Sarah felt the tension slowly ease. The young gorilla backed away, and Kwame remained in place, his eyes never leaving her. For a brief moment, everything was silent. There was no rush to move, no immediate danger, just the steady rhythm of the jungle around them. Sarah slowly, cautiously, began to back away, inch by inch. She didn't dare turn her back on the gorillas. The connection between her and the silverback lingered in the air, a silent understanding that she would not forget. As Sarah slowly backed away, her heart still pounding, she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief. The tension in the air was palpable, but somehow the situation had resolved itself. Kwame remained standing where he had positioned himself, his large frame acting as both a shield and a calming presence. For a moment, Sarah simply stood there, still processing what had just happened. Her mind raced, trying to understand the silverback's behavior. Why hadn't he attacked? Why had he stepped in to protect her of all people? It was something Sarah had only read about in research papers and heard stories of from other field workers, but never experienced firsthand. Gorillas could be unpredictable, and a lone human was always at a disadvantage in the jungle. Yet here she was, alive and unharmed, thanks to the intervention of a wild animal she had only admired from afar. Sarah continued to slowly retreat, keeping her eyes on Kwame the entire time. He didn't move. He simply stood there, watching her with an intensity that sent a chill down her spine. It was as if he was making sure she wasn't a threat, that she understood the boundaries of his world. The young gorilla, now far behind Kwame, was no longer a concern. It had turned and joined the others, its initial aggression replaced by confusion. The air felt still, almost surreal. No sounds of the jungle reached her ears. All Sarah could hear was the steady beating of her heart and the soft, distant sounds of the other gorillas in the clearing. She knew she was experiencing something rare, something extraordinary. When she finally reached a safe distance, she stopped and turned back to observe the troop once more. Kwame had not moved an inch. His posture had relaxed, though his eyes never left her. He seemed calm, almost as if he had done what was needed, and now felt assured that there was no immediate danger. For the next few days, Sarah reflected on what had happened. She couldn't shake the feeling that Kwame had somehow recognized something in her, something beyond her being a mere observer. Was it simply instinct? Was he protecting the troop and ensuring that the balance of power within his group was maintained? Or had he, in some strange way, understood her vulnerability as a human in his world? The more Sarah thought about it, the more she realized that what she had witnessed wasn't just about dominance or survival, it was about something deeper. Kwame hadn't been aggressive or territorial. Instead, he had acted out of a sense of protection, not just for his family, but for her as well. She wasn't a threat to him or his group. In that moment, she wasn't just a human, she was something more. Kwame's behavior was a reminder that the world of gorillas, though wild and untamed, was also a world full of complexity and unexpected acts of compassion. Sarah couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of awe for the creatures she had devoted her life to studying. In the days that followed, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about her encounter with Kwame. She had read countless studies about gorillas, their behavior, and their complex social structures, but nothing had prepared her for the moment of connection she had experienced with the silverback. It wasn't just a fleeting instance of animal instinct. There was something more to it, something that transcended the usual boundaries between humans and wildlife. Experts who later analyzed the event suggested that Kwame's actions were a mix of instinct and learned behavior. Gorillas are known to protect their own, especially when it comes to their families. But what made this situation so unusual was the way Kwame had acted towards Sarah, a complete stranger, without any clear reason other than to ensure her safety. While it could have been an instinctive response to a perceived threat, there was a chance that Kwame had recognized something different in Sarah. Perhaps he saw her as vulnerable or in need of protection, much like he would protect a young gorilla in his troop. In the years since, Sarah spoke with many wildlife behaviorists and primatologists who marveled at Kwame's actions. One theory that gained traction was the idea that some gorillas, particularly the dominant silverbacks, have a deep sense of empathy. While empathy is something we typically associate with humans, there were documented cases of gorillas displaying behavior that suggested they could sense the emotional state of others, whether gorillas or even humans. Sarah herself was hesitant to fully embrace this idea at first. She didn't want to romanticize the event or project human emotions onto an animal, but the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. Kwame hadn't just stopped the young gorilla from charging her, he had acted with calmness, as though he understood that there was no real threat from Sarah. And he had stayed with her, standing guard until the situation was resolved, showing a level of restraint and awareness that Sarah couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the act itself that left a lasting impact on Sarah. It was the sense of respect and understanding that had been conveyed through Kwame's actions. He had known exactly how to handle the situation, demonstrating a level of intelligence that often goes unrecognized in the animal kingdom. Gorillas, like many other animals, are incredibly skilled at reading the body language and intentions of those around them. In this case, Kwame had seen that Sarah wasn't a danger to him or his family, and instead of reacting with aggression, he chose to protect. Over time, Sarah learned that this wasn't an isolated event. There were other stories of gorillas showing similar behavior, though they were rarely documented. Some researchers had reported instances where gorillas appeared to protect injured or vulnerable individuals of other species. There was even a case where a female gorilla took in an orphaned antelope calf and raised it as part of her troop. These rare and often unreported acts of compassion challenged the conventional view of gorillas as only instinct-driven creatures, showing that they were capable of behaviors far more complex than anyone had originally imagined. For Sarah, the event with Kwame was a turning point in her understanding of gorillas. It wasn't just about their survival or their role in the ecosystem. It was about their emotional depth and the unspoken bonds that could exist between humans and these magnificent animals. What had happened in that jungle clearing was a reminder that there is still so much we don't understand about the animal world. And sometimes, the most profound moments of connection come when we least expect them. In the weeks following the incident, Sarah couldn't shake the memory of that moment. Kwame's calm presence, his decision to protect her without hesitation, lingered in her mind long after she returned to the conservation outpost. It was an experience she would never forget, and one that changed the way she saw gorillas, and even herself, in the vast and intricate web of life. Over time, Sarah continued to visit the troop from a safe distance, following the guidelines set by the conservationists. The trust that had been established between her and Kwame remained unspoken but clear. Every time she saw him, he would acknowledge her with a soft gaze, as if recognizing her as a part of their world. There was never any aggression, no signs of discomfort. It was as if the boundary that once existed between her and the gorillas had begun to blur, replaced by a quiet understanding. Sarah's work in the field grew more focused. She began documenting her experiences with the gorillas, detailing not just their behavior, but also the connections that seemed to form between them and humans. Her research and the story of her encounter with Kwame gained attention in the wildlife conservation community. It wasn't just about studying gorillas anymore. It was about sharing the deep, often untold stories of their emotional intelligence, their capacity for empathy, and their ability to form bonds across species. Soon, Sarah became a recognized voice in gorilla conservation, speaking at conferences, contributing to research papers, and working with other experts to raise awareness about the need to protect these incredible creatures. She used her platform to advocate for more ethical approaches to wildlife observation and conservation, stressing the importance of respecting the autonomy of wild animals, while also understanding the complexities of their emotional and social lives. Her experience with Kwame became a symbol of the untapped potential of human-animal relationships. It wasn't just about admiration for these magnificent creatures. It was about understanding that they were more than just subjects to be studied. Gorillas, like many other species, were capable of deep emotional connections, and they had the ability to teach us something about empathy, trust, and even protection. In the years that followed, Sarah's story went viral, inspiring others to think differently about their relationship with wildlife. People from around the world reached out to her, sharing their own experiences with animals that had protected, comforted, or even befriended them. Sarah realized that her story was not just hers to tell, but part of a much larger conversation about the shared emotional and cognitive capacities that exist across species. Looking back, Sarah knew that what happened in that jungle clearing wasn't just a random act of kindness from a wild animal. It was a reminder that the world was full of untold stories, waiting to be shared and understood. And as long as humans like Sarah continued to push the boundaries of knowledge and respect, there was hope for a future where we could coexist with animals in a way that honored their intelligence, their compassion, and their place in the world.